If you played DBD recently, there is a high chance you saw at least one survivor using the perk Windows of Opportunity in your matches. According to nightlight.gg, a website that tracks the pick rate of perks and killers based on manual input, Windows of Opportunity sits at number 1 most used perk in the game by far with a significant 33.16% usage rate. This statistically means that there is a 1/4 chance that a survivor has this perk individually. This is an absurdly high pick rate considering that the game has over 100 survivor perks to choose from. But it's true, this is one of the most popular perks in the game right now. So that means that this perk is overpowered, right? Well, the reality is more complicated than that. Unlike the vast majority of perks in the game, Windows of Opportunity is a purely information perk that does not provide you with any effect that is not achievable without it. For example, boons provide a new gameplay mechanic allowing you to create safe zones by interacting with a totem, or exhaustion perks like Life, which give you a speed boost that is not achievable in any other way without equipping the perks. But Windows of Opportunity only shows you the things that are already present in the map. Whether you have this perk equipped or not, the maps will have a similar layout and will have some specific windows that always spawn in preset locations. So why is this perk, which looks like it was made for new players to get used to maps, so powerful? The real reason why, and why so many people are running it, is because it actually provides significant important information that is on the level of the best competitive tournament teams with just a perk slot. Basically, what I am trying to say is that with Windows of Opportunity, it makes the entire map into an asset that you can use as an advantage over the killer, which is especially powerful for average and casual survivors. One thing that a lot of survivors do not do during their gameplay is to plan ahead before they start a chase, or to chain very strong loops. Instead, many survivors only focus on the current structure during the chase, or they start thinking of chaining loops once they get hit. For example, in this situation, I have two potential pallet spawns next to me, one on the left with a visible pallet, and two boulders that block my vision completely. Currently, I am unaware of what is located behind those two rocks, and if it's a smart choice to start running on that direction in case the killer is coming. With Windows of Opportunity, however, I can see that there is a massive dead zone with no windows or pallets on the right, and my only safe option is to go to the left, which I can chain the pallet and the window. This is information that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have Windows of Opportunity, unless I wasted my time by scouting both sides of the map. So thanks to this perk, I know that even if the killer is coming from my left side, the best option is still the left because there is nothing on the right. On this other example, I am repairing a generator in a corner of a map. Thanks to Windows of Opportunity, I can see that my left side is completely empty of pallets and windows, and my only safe choice is the right, which includes a single window leading to an easy chain to the killer shack. Imagine that in both cases, I didn't have the perk. An average survivor does not have the safety of knowing where a pallet is generated unless they scout the area beforehand, and this is not a thing that many players do. They simply go to the first generator they see and they start repairing. But with Windows of Opportunity, you don't have to scout or waste your time at all. You immediately know what is the safest route to take, and you can even scout the map while repairing a generator and plan ahead. So in other words, not only you are skipping the entirety of memorizing map and tile generation, which takes a lot of game knowledge and experience, most importantly, you also completely remove the RNG aspect of map generations. Even if you perfectly know the layout of each map by memory, you still cannot guarantee what tiles will be generated in each spot, or in which side the windows and pallets will appear. Remember the example of me repairing in the corner of the swamp? In a completely different match, but on the same map, suddenly it's a completely different situation. This is one of the reasons why I personally disagree with Oddsdarva's balanced pyramid, and I think RNG should be below experience, since RNG determines the amount of resources and how strong they are in a map. Windows of Opportunity skips the RNG part of the match, and guarantees that you will never run into a dead zone as long as you use this perk to the full potential, and this is why it's so strong, because RNG is one of the most influential parts of a DBD match. A lot of times, killers get easy downs against survivors because they accidentally or while in a panic state run into a dead zone with no pallets, windows, or any loopable tile, which is basically a fast down for any killer. This happens when survivors have no idea where to go, but Windows literally tells you which parts of the map are safe and which parts aren't. And this is not even including the fact that as long as you are a solo player, even with all the map knowledge in the world, you still cannot know for a fact what palette has been used or not. If you are surviving with friends and someone ends up using the shack palette, you can communicate this information to everyone on your Discord call and they will know that the shack is no longer safe. However, if you are a solo player, you might run to the shack thinking that the god palette is still there and end up with a sad surprise when you discover that the Meg has already used it with 5 generators left. In this example, there is only 1 gen left, so you would assume that the shack palette is gone, yet the shack palette has not been used, which means I can safely go there thanks to Windows of Opportunity. Information is one of the strongest assets in Dead by Daylight. This is one example of how strong information on Discord can be in a match. In this situation against Blight, I am running straight because I know to my left there are no useful tiles. However, I can see an injured Claudette coming to me thanks to Kindred, and this is when I decide to go to the left instead and take a hit. If I ran straight, the Blight would have downed Claudette, which leaves our team in an awkward position. This is something that is normally exclusive to survive with friends in a Discord call, but I did it completely solo thanks to Windows of Opportunity and Kindred combined, which are both very good solo survivor perks. This is the main reason why you won't see these perks in competitive play, because the information is already there and it's given through comms. Windows of Opportunity simply shows that the game is fundamentally not designed with good survivors with extreme communication in mind, and the truth is that the vast majority of survivors are simply solo casuals or average, or they don't want to admit that they are below average. The moment the vast majority of survivors know how to loop and play, it's a survivor-sided game unless the killer decides to camp, slug, 3gen or tunnel, and the survivors make the mistake of being altruistic. And the funniest part of all is that Windows of Opportunity does not give you skill. It's not a perk like Head On, Death Heart or Sprint Burst, where you get an exclusive effect to the perk which can increase your skill ceiling. Windows of Opportunity simply allows you to use your inherent looping skills to the max by removing the RNG aspect of Dead by Daylight. If you are a bad survivor, this perk will not make you suddenly a god. It will simply help you significantly into preventing big mistakes which lead to the killer snowballing a match into a 4K. Now, if you are a good survivor, you still get the benefit of removing the random factor of not knowing what type of generation there is in a specific map or what resources have been used yet. And if you are competitive, a top level survivor, this perk is not that useful because the information is already present in the map and via comms. Windows of Opportunity massively benefits players that are already familiar with the game, and it benefits less to those who have absurd amounts of hours invested. Before, I was a disbeliever of how good this perk was, and one day I decided to give it a try, and it completely changed my survivor gameplay. Whereas before, if I got downed by a killer, I was blaming the RNG of the map or my teammates for spending resources because I am a sore loser. Now, if I get downed in a chase, it was fully my fault and my inability to correctly mind game the killers. So overall, does it need a nerf? The survivor versus killer mentality has always been a big problem in the community, but something I noticed from the windows of opportunity debates is that this is the perk that survivor mains will defend the most out of all the perks in the game, to the point that the idea of this perk being nerfed is taken as a massive joke. It's like there is a survivor main agreement to bully and ridicule anyone that even hints at nerfing this perk because they know how powerful it is in reality. And even if I am mostly a killer main, I have to agree that this perk does not need a nerf. So let me explain why. First of all, the only way to nerf a perk like this would be to completely butcher it to the point where it's not usable anymore. And this is, in my personal opinion, a stupid way to balance a game. The only options to nerf windows is to reduce the range of this perk, which would make it significantly worse, or add a cooldown to it, which would make the perk useless for chaining loops, the most important part of a chase. Both options end up turning the perk into trash territory. The second thing that this perk has compared to the vast majority of survivor perks is that this has a very easy and strong counter to it, which is called the blindness status effect. Nowadays, every single killer has an add-on that is able to apply blindness to the survivors in some capacity, and some of the add-ons are so absurd and easy to apply that it makes it impossible to claim that this perk has zero counter from the killer side. You don't even have to spend a perk slot into countering this entire perk. You have two add-on slots. One can be used with a blindness add-on that turns one perk slot of the survivors into completely useless. And finally, and most importantly, nerfing this perk achieves nothing. The top level survivors will still play as frustrating as they can now, and it will simply make the average player that depended on windows of opportunity worse, which in turn would make the game more miserable to play for a considerable high percentage of survivor players while leaving the fundamental problems of the game intact. The kill rate for a majority of characters is already at an all-time high, and making that higher would not solve anything. So what is the fundamental problem of the game? I said it many times, various big content creators said it too. The maps and luck. The map design of Dead by Daylight and the RNG nature of the game make it so that it's impossible to make it a balanced competitive game, since every single match will have different resources than the others. Sometimes you might get entire areas with nothing useful in them, and in other matches you might get extremely cracked loops that you can chain with no skill. The game is designed in such a way that you can simply pre-draw pallets against most killers and keep holding W, and most of the cast is unable to do anything about it. The problem is not windows of opportunity. This perk simply showcases how unbalanced the game is fundamentally and how much it depends on RNG in order to play safe. The game was originally viewed as a casual horror game. This was the type of players that the devs were targeting, the ones that don't even look back at the killer or that run in a straight line with no planning at all. But just like with any game that is fun, players will start to optimize it as if it were a competitive game. And whether you disagree or not with Dead by Daylight being a competitive game, as long as there are official behavior endorsed tournaments available on it where you can compete, the game is objectively a competitive game. And this is where a big subjective part of the video comes in. What is fun and what isn't fun? For some players, the fun part of DBD is to simply have stupid matches where you are interacting with a funny way with other players, Or for example, play an entire match with the Huntress only caring about hitting nasty shots to share with the community, creating memorable moments. But this is not a role-playing game, so for the vast majority of players, the fun part is winning, and according to the devs, the win condition in the game is to either escape or to sacrifice. So as a killer, you have zero incentive to not run the best slowdown perks in the game with the most cracked add-ons every single match, which is also a problem now that the Blood Web is so cheap and Prestige does not reset your inventory anymore. And for survivors, repairing generators is not the fun part unless you are a weirdo. It's having great, long chases where they mind game the killers and stay alive, and windows of opportunity greatly helps with the fun part of the game for a lot of survivors, especially those that maybe don't have enough time to devote to a single game like a competitive survive with friends team can. What the killer community should do, in my personal opinion, is to incentivize the devs to stop making dog water maps that are artistically a 10 out of 10, but gameplay wise they are worse than the way I pronounce DDoS attacks. Nerfing windows solves nothing, as survivors will eventually reach a point where they learn how to chain loops more, and they learn how busted the maps are in reality. And like previously stated, nerfing windows does not change in any way how pro survivors play the game, as they still have Discord, so they know what palettes have been used, and they still know the map layout because of their game knowledge, so they know how to loop. When the gut reaction of the vast majority of the community to the fact that the latest 4 maps to be released will have a boosted probability to appear is negative, I think it's safe to say that maps are one of the worst parts of the game, and windows of opportunity is not a problem. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments. Have a nice day.